published the picture of you and your startup, and I think somebody remember 3 people, 1 guy and 2 cows in a panel or in a session somewhere. So why should publish that picture? So with that, I'm going to invite Shell Israel, one of our panelists who has come all the way from Silicon Valley, 24 hours apart. Shell, 24 hours, good? Yeah?
It took me 3 days.
3 days, okay.
And I talk about the speed of things.
So Shell has written this very popular book called The Naked Conversations, and it's going to talk about that title. Shell is a social media expert and has written for Business Week and advocate of how conversation and engagement is the way to go. Welcome, Shell. Next, we have Archana Rai of Economic Times. So Archana holds this baton of profiling the emerging companies on Economic Times. She's the editor of the emerging beat there at ET. And thanks to her, there's a weekly coverage of emerging companies, hopefully going daily, Archana? Weekly coverage of emerging companies on ET. Archana, we're happy to have you here. And then we have Nikhil Pahwa of Medianama. So Nikhil is the founder of Medianama and also an advocate of policies around IT, digital conversations, digital media, and how the next generation of startups would be built when they are covered not on the news media of print or print days or mass media, but digital conversation and digital coverage. Nikhil, happy to have you here. My name is Indus. I am the black shirt, one of the black shirts for this particular event. So, let's get started. So just to set the tone, and I mentioned it earlier, a gripe every entrepreneur has: why am I not newsworthy? Why my neighbor's dog's startup gets covered and mine doesn't? So the question comes back, okay, is the news good enough to be covered? Are you the startup who has the story to be covered? Are you the startup who's engaging the users of these publications that their readers should worry about or readers should care about? So with that tone, I would put it on my panel as in what their take is. Where is the gap? What the startups should do to make their stories newsworthy. So Nikhil, on to you. So what is your perspective? Why a startup isn't being covered, or how a startup should get covered? What should the startup do to get covered?
Is this on? Right, okay. Well, the way I look at it, a startup should be covered if it has the right product or the right service, and it pitches it right. One of the problems that I've seen is that there is this mass mail approach, this, hey, we get mails that say, hey, can you upload this press release on your site? To me, that's almost insulting at times, because we take decisions on what we cover, what we don't. It's an editorial process. And we need to understand what you're doing, how you're doing, why you're doing it, before we take, so to help us take a decision on whether we write about it or not. But my basic philosophy is you don't need PR, you need a good product. If there are enough people talking about it, if there's enough consumers or enough people telling us, hey, you should look at these guys, we'll jump at it. But we need to also understand how it fits into our scheme of things, into how we have a particular policy by which we take a decision on whether to cover something or not. And whether it fits in with that or not is a decision that we have to take, because we understand what our reader wants. Usually we speak with our readers, and on that basis we take a call. We are the filter. My former boss, a guy called Rafat Ali, used to say that we are the bullshit detectors. So we're always on the lookout for either bad pitches or bad products, and that's how we take a call.
So Archana, your perspective, you write this weekly page on the emerging product companies, and the same thing coming back to you as in, what makes a story worthy of your attention? And overall, if a startup wants to get coverage and wants to reach out to a mass media through you, what are you looking for?
Thanks, Indus, and hello, everybody. I think what's really important for us to do really is to step back here, all of us in this room perhaps and overall, and to think about a story as something that would engage a reader when he picks up the paper the next morning. For me, really, it's not so much about should a startup be covered, shouldn't it be covered. That's not the issue. Really, the issue for me is this something that my reader is going to read tomorrow? I think that's really important for all of us, to not be boxed in when you're thinking about it and being focused just on getting across a particular point of view that one might have. The idea is to look at, is it worth being told? Who's going to be interested in it? And how best can it be said? Really, those are the three things that I would think about. And so I don't really think about any, also in terms of when I say these are the three things that I think about, the person who can best articulate that to me clearly will get my attention. Finally, I think this is something we were talking about earlier. We're human, right? So if there is 5 different stories being said to me, the one that's presented most appealingly is the one that's going to get my attention. But that could be just a factor for that, right? Then you're going to, then the next thing that I'm going to think about is, fine, this appeals to me, sure, but then is it going to appeal to my reader? Why, how then should the story be said? Those are the things that are going to matter to me. So I'm going to think about those rather than should a startup be covered, shouldn't it be covered? That I think is pretty much important when when anyone's trying to reach a media person. And the other thing I would agree with is what Nikhil was saying, where you find people being very oriented towards, here is a release, here is what I've done, why don't you write about me? Or getting aggressive and saying, somebody else has been covered, so why can't I be covered? Now, those really are not the issues involved really in writing about a story or writing about a company. I think that perspective has to be there even when someone's trying to reach out to us and trying to get our attention. I think that's where the whole conversation can begin, and perhaps from then on it can progress better. That's really what I would like to sort of
Sure.
leave.
Thanks, Archana. Over to you, Shell. So your perspective on what the startup should do to reach out and engaging you and the story behind it. What's your perspective?
It's a little difficult to reiterate yet again what was just said, but from a business perspective, my customer is my reader. My career is dependent upon my reader. On a personal level, my loyalty is to my reader. You can be somebody I really like, and I'm really on your side, or you could be the opposite of that. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters to me is the story. I'm all about the story. If you want to know what story will appeal to any one of the three of us, I have 3 words that every editor in the world will probably tell you. Read my stuff. I told, when we were preparing for this, an old story in my life. I wrote a book called Naked Conversations. And shortly after that, I started getting pitched by someone who wanted me to attend a fashion show for a company you might have heard of called Victoria's Secrets, which, if you don't know, involves women in scanty underwear, and I'm very fond of women in scanty underwear, but I don't write about them, and I usually don't go to media events covering that sort of stuff. But I was really curious how I got selected to be pitched for this. And somebody on the other side nervously said, well, I see you wrote a book called Naked Conversations. And, I have a dog, and they say a dog has a mind of a 2-year-old, but he's smarter than she was. There is a thing called the internet. Any editor or analyst that you're going to talk to has content, what we're all asking you for, the story.
So I just wanted to jump in there. One of the things you also need to realize is that, and I'm assuming this is true as well, we get a lot of mail every day. And for us, and most of it is actually completely irrelevant, at least in my case, because we cover digital, internet and mobile businesses and policy, and I get press releases for marine fuel and for bathing products and cosmetics. Now, I don't know why I get them, but it's actually a problem of the PR industry that's making things worse for genuine companies that want to contact us. So the amount of time that we have every day, and remember, mine is a 2-people team doing content. 2 people churning out 6 to 8 to 10 stories every time we get on. Yeah, so a slightly different perspective here, because I'm not really interested in the story. I'm interested in the product, I'm interested in the service, and I'm interested in how it fits in the digital value chain. What is it that you're really trying to do? So if you ask me, I'd like you to, if someone's sending me a mail about what they're doing, I just want to know who you are, what you're doing, and these are straightforward bullet points: who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, what's the market that you're targeting, and how do you fit in with that particular value chain. That just makes my decision so much easier, and it makes me interested in what you're doing, because otherwise, you know, if you're not trying to address a real market problem, if you're like the 50th daily deal site in India, you lose me at what am I doing. But if it's something which really is disruptive, so going back to what I said in the beginning, you don't need PR, you need a good product and service. Then you just need to pitch it right, don't be over enthusiastic, don't be just straightforward business, like this is what we do. The way you would pitch to an investor if you, is the way I think you should pitch to us.
So one question which I have is, you know, this is the problem I faced in the past, that a target media site or a property, and there are 5 people writing about 5 different verticals. You know, one guy writing on mobile, second about internet commerce, you know, others. Now, I probably have knowledge about one target vertical, which is my product. Now, how do I know who's the decision maker for this vertical? Of course, the guy writing about it or the lady writing about it. Who makes a decision on what articles go on to that particular vertical? And should I just blindly send to these 5 people with, of course, the engaging pitch and the product, whatever you mentioned? How do I identify who's the target? Is the decision maker the person who has written a previous article on the same topic? Or is it somebody else? Is the editor the real decision maker? How do I, you know, overcome that dilemma?
Thanks. In my case, I am my editor. I have the liberty to fire myself. I would give myself a pay cut, but I can't possibly work for less. Thank you. What is important is to know who we are and what you have that's relevant to our readers. Because if it's not relevant to our customers, as I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, but Archana? As my colleague says, why are you pitching her? In my case, it's easy. I cover startups. Unfortunately, I cover ones that are usually US-based. If you wanted to pitch me, then it would be, why would my essentially US-based readers want to know your story? Some of you in this room probably have a reason to tell me that story, and I'm very interested. When somebody pitches me, believe it or not, I'm looking for you to succeed. I will let you stumble and fumble a little as long as you don't drain my time. Because you don't have to be professional. I'm not going to grade you on presentation points, but I need you to form the triangle between you, me, and my readers. My colleague works for a much larger organization, and essentially that triangle is still at the decision-making fulcrum. It doesn't change at all, really, does it?
Yeah, in the sense, actually what Shell was saying really in being aware of who you're talking to is pretty much important, because even if you were to look at the larger world of economic times, I guess the thing would be if you went out and spoke to somebody there, then you would have to rely on them to reach out to the vertical that handles emerging business for your story to be told. I guess that's it's the process, really. So in that sense, it makes your life much easier if you, for instance, knew who did emerging business to begin with. So it'll cut a few more barriers for you. Just goes back to what he was saying, of being very sure who you're talking to about what, and just doing that homework ahead of time. I think it just comes down to that, really.
Nikhil, you want to add to that?
Well, if you're pitching to us, you're pitching to me. Or you're pitching to Anupam, this is two of us. If you go to twitter.com/MediaNama, all contact details are there. Like I said, the only constraint I have is time. There are also things which I want to dwell upon, which is what not to do. I'll give you an example. Someone sent us a bunch of photographs about them talking at a conference and said, hey, we're the first Indian startup to talk at this particular conference. Can you upload my photographs? I don't know, I just don't get it.
It was their photograph? His person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I wasn't a nice guy, I would have published the photograph and just ripped him apart on it. But I assume I am.
In my Victoria's Secret story, they didn't offer me any photos.
You had to go for it.
That was the carrot, yeah.
The other thing so there are only a few things that really piss me off. One of them is offering something in return for coverage. That's the one thing that I hold very dearly is the trust of my readers and my integrity. And I've been on record saying this, and I'll say it again. I'd rather shut down than sell out, period. If someone talks to me telling me that, listen, I'll take you out for this, I'll take you out for that. Someone wrote back, listen, we're a startup, so we can't afford anything more, but we'll take you out for a cup of coffee. Even if it's a joke, I'm sorry, but this is not something I have a sense of humor about. Think about it, about what would happen if someone said that to you. You know, I think you have to, like Archana mentioned earlier, we're human. And there's some values which we hold very, very dearly. And integrity, I think, for most good journalists is tops. Trust of our readers is tops. Anything else, it varies, but we even return Diwali gifts that we get. Even when we go for press conference, someone hands us a box of something, we just give it back. We don't take this stuff. We don't even take review gadgets or etc. because people don't take them back. We don't want anything. We just want to do the best content that we can. We want to service our readers the best way that we can, and that's what matters. So this naivety, or there is this bullheadedness that seems to be creeping in over the last year or so, I've noticed increasingly, as if you can offer something and it'll get you covered.
So that also shows that the industry is booming, right?
Can I add something
Not the
to
way
that?
I wanted to.
All right, Archana, over to you.
And then me. But
Yeah. No, very quickly, I just want to turn this around and say, for instance, why would you want to offer an incentive? Is it because you're not sure of yourself? That's my question. It's really my question to you. Why would you want to do that? Because I would think you would want to be judged on merit. You would want a story written about what is good about what you're doing. If you, in turn, are offering an incentive, to me, that's a straightaway flag that says you're not sure about yourself, you're not good enough, even before one gets, and it just displays a level of cynicism. You're actually making a judgment about somebody you know nothing about. You're actually trying to say, let's talk about something other than the merit of the case over here. It's a complete, that's it. It doesn't even, you don't need to go forward from there at all.
Yeah, this is a very valuable one. Shell, over to you.
it's, I guess, Nikhil, I said your name right, that's right, raised a very big hot button in just about every journalist. And if you climb inside our collective brain, we begin by realizing that if we want to pursue a career as writers, we're taking a vow of poverty. Now add certain ironies. If we're any good, we acquire a certain amount of influence, and that influence is based upon our integrity. Okay? Now, add a little more to it. Usually, when we're in an interview, there's a PR person there, there's the speaker there, there's a product demonstrator there, there's us. We're making the least money in the room, and we provide the greatest influence, but we don't get the influence for us. We get it for you. So when you do anything that tries to corrupt this, I'd love to say journalism is ethically pure, but there are too many stories that would reveal that that just isn't the case. But if we lose our credibility, we lose our usefulness to us. And if you're going to bribe us, start at a higher level than a cup of coffee. You know, come on.
So I'll pause here.
I mean, let's talk price here.
Okay, go ahead.
I just had one thing to add. Also, please understand that we're not in the business of doing PR for anyone. There seems to be that sort of a perception that, for example, I got a call from someone saying, hey, we're starting a marketing campaign next week, and we are wondering if you could do an interview with our CEO to coincide with the marketing campaign. Why should I? You know, it's just, am I in the, we're working for our readers above all. So if you want to go through the filter, we are filters, if you want to go through the filter, you have to approach it right, you have to give us something that we feel will be of value to the reader. We're not in the business of doing PR for anyone ever.
Sure.
That's the way I see it.
So we'll pause here 5 minutes, take some questions and go back to my questions. Okay, first one.
Okay. So I think a couple of points well taken. You do your due diligence before publishing, and we also got what not to do. Assuming everybody in the room wants to do the right thing, can you share some real life example or ingredients of what would be a good pitch? What are the best practices? Do you look for certain keywords in the title? What do you look for in the body of the message? Do you look for slide deck, elevator pitch? What do you look for?
Good question. So let's start with Archana. So let's say he's targeting Economic Times. What should be his ideal pitch to you?
Very brief. I'd like to know what he does, who he is, and really what he hopes to grow the company into. That much is good enough for me. And given that we are journalists, I'm not really looking for presentation and so on and so forth. Send me a very brief written note answering these questions, and I will revert to you. You can remind me perhaps, but I'd really appreciate it if I'm not spammed, because that's a real, you know, because as Nikhil said, we are anyway overloaded with a lot of pictures, with a lot of information which we have to filter out, because that's our job, definitely. So trust me to revert to you, which I will. I've never not reverted, although it might take time. You will get a revert.
So Archana, okay to do a phone call on the very first. So he's sending an email. Can he also do a phone call if he knows your number through some friend?
Email is best.
Email is best. Follow up through phone call? No? Okay. All right, Shell.
No, that was a thumbs down.
Thumbs down for phone call. No phone calls. Okay, guys.
I live in social media, and the best way to pitch me is not to. The best way is to read me in social media and start talking to me, preferably in Twitter, but in my blog or on Facebook works. Offer me tidbits that show me that, one, you have some interest, passion in one of the many areas that I cover that involve any startups, any web-oriented startups. So then when it comes time to pitch me, you've answered the 3 criteria that we all have in any kind of presentation. I need to know who you are, I need to know what you want, and I can help. So I don't have the same checklist you do, but I need to know who you are and why you're pitching me. And right after that, what I need to know is, in 1 sentence or 2, tell me what this is about and what you want me to write about. And everything that comes after that, hit your delete button, because that's your broadcast part, and we're leaving the age of broadcast and we're entering into the conversational era. And in the conversational era, what you really want out of the pitch are the 3 magic words you can get from editors after we shout at you to read our stuff, and that is, tell me more. And in the tell me more, we start drilling down with the questions we have. You may want to talk about this, but we want to hear about that. You may want a story about you, but we may want to include you in a story we're working on a topic that may include you.
Great point.
So I'd already identified how to, what we're looking for, which is where you fit in the value chain, because we're looking for businesses that can scale. One of the things I forgot to point out earlier is that we don't look at companies as startups or big companies, essentially. We look at companies that can move the market one way or another. So sometimes we're late in identifying companies. For example, we didn't cover Flipkart for the longest time. Until, for the first time ever, I found that internet CEOs were saying, hey, you guys got to look at this company because they're actually delivering books on time that I've ordered. Now, internet CEOs are very bitchy. I speak with many of them. And this was the first time I heard anyone actually praise another internet company. So I think even contacting us through references, at least in my case, that helps. That's a form of validation. Sometimes we do look for some kind of validation, but if you're familiar with what you're doing, do keep in mind that I'm tracking just about everything I can, that's humanly possible for me, on Twitter, on the web. I'm watching newspapers, I'm watching other sites. I can see what's happening. So it's not that I'm completely new to things.
Sure.
Once that familiarity is built, then you just need to drive it home by being brief and sharp about what you're doing. I would identify a word limit and say that I guess 300 to 500 words in a mail that comes to me is ballpark okay. 300 words is fantastic.
So just add on to it. So Shell, you get pictures on email. How about Facebook, Twitter pictures? Anybody? Just yes or no? Yes.
Not many,
Not
but
many?
some.
Now you get Facebook pictures?
No, email.
Email only? Nikhil? Twitter pictures, Facebook pictures?
So SMS, email, calls, Facebook, Twitter, DMs, just about everything.
And you're just two people?
Snail mail.
Yeah. No, actually I never got any snail mail ever. But the thing is,
Not in 20
hate
years.
calls. Just don't have the time for calls.
Okay, we'll do a couple of more questions.
You're in a different
Gentlemen over
position,
there.
aren't you?
Sorry.
Oh, okay, go
Is
ahead.
it me you're pointing to?
I pointed in this direction.
Oh, okay. So recently we have been contacted by an agency, a PR agency, which says that we can actually tell them where we want what story to be published, and they sound to be pretty authentic. They're in business for last decade or so they're doing this all along. And my competitors are doing it, so should I, or would that tantamount to corruption?
Let me
10 seconds.
challenge a lot. I'm probably the only professional journalist who spent 17 years as a PR person. I get interviewed myself from time to time. Agencies promise a great deal, and they claim a great deal. What I would ask that agency to do is give you 2 clients, 2 case studies that succeeded. Then I would ask them to reveal to you 2 clients who resigned them in the last year and get the names of who you can call to speak to. Okay, then the next thing I would do is I would call up the editor in question and say, you know, this is what this person at this PR agency told me. Is this true? Now, you'll recall we all seem to get pretty flustered when we get to the issue of ethics. And I would love to hear what the editor had to say about that.
All right, sir, over there.
May I just add?
Sure.
If anyone ever says that this is applicable to us, nikhil@medianama.com, please mail me. Someone has told us that someone actually promised it,
What's going
and I contacted the head of the agency just to rip them apart. Never, ever, ever will this ever happen.
Okay, sir, over to you.
Hello, yes. One observation and then one question to you. So I'm on all sides of the fence. I've been a journalist and PR and an entrepreneur as well. One of the things as a piece of advice is when you pitch to an editor, just make sure that you're pitching as if you're pitching to a VC or an investor or a customer. Make sure that it is actually that elevator pitch, because that's all they have time for. Then the question to you, I mean, one of the things that I've found working with startups is they're really ignorant about how PR works. They think it's advertising. And every startup I worked on, whether it's the US, UK, Europe, not so much India, they always say, and can we pay to get this press release published? And this goes to your point about people asking you to upload pictures. So my point to you, because they're startups, they're entrepreneurial, they don't necessarily have PR people or whatever, they're technologists or business people. My question to you is, isn't it your job, say, we know now from you, but isn't it your job as a publication to have the guidance to start to pitch to us visibly on your websites, on your publications, so that people in this room can say, this is how I do it. And it can be to each specific magazine or publication.
I think that's a very good point. And I really want to have that, it would also increase your efficiency of getting the stories out. So if everybody knows, okay, this is a template, you don't waste time on pictures which are not even in that template. So Nikhil, 30 seconds on that.
Thank you for the suggestion. We'll do this. The other thing is that in terms of, even if we do this, I'm not sure if many people will read it, because that's what happens. There are times when I've got a call from a PR agency saying, this is blah, 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 and I say, okay, I tell them, go to the site, click on the About page, and can you read out what we do? And that's where the call ends. So information's there, but not many people do their homework. That's a problem I've seen across the board.
Archana, your point on that?
Again, see what we mentioned earlier, I think we discussed this a little earlier when we were preparing. Every time I'm talking to a startup, it's not just about a startup pitching, wanting to be written about, and that issue being done at that point. It's not about a transaction, a single transaction. Every time I'm talking to an entrepreneur, I believe that I have established a business contact whom I can refer to if I want to speak about that particular industry perhaps before, or talk about him in a larger trend story. So it's every time it's a business contact that I believe I have, that I have established that can be used not just to write one story, be done with it, forget about it. It doesn't work like that for us in any case, because we are not, I don't know really exactly how he presents it, but we don't really have a template approach to this. As in, my questions will always be the same: who you are, what is it that you do, how are you unique or different, and how do you expect to build this business? Now, those are questions that are standard. Beyond that, then, it is about knowing a particular entrepreneur, knowing a particular company, and being able to use that in multiple stories in different ways. So there is no template to it, as far as I'm concerned.
Shel, you want to add anything?
Wow. I think it was well covered. It's an excellent question. When you bring in a PR agency, this can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. But you have to be very cautious, because you're putting a layer of bureaucracy and control between you and us. If that agency has expertise, forget relationships. Relationships aren't quite as important with PR people as you think. What we want from them is facilitation. We want them to brief you about what we want from you, and to brief us about what you're going to give us. We want to be able to tell them, don't do this, don't do that. That's their role, and then their job is to step out. You have agencies that are going to rehearse you and teach you to memorize something. Please don't ever talk to an editor with a memorized pitch. You're dead. You're toast. The second thing, which you addressed very well, is my first PR mentor was Regis McKenna, who in Silicon Valley was sort of legendary. And his recurring theme was, PR is a process, it is not an event. A front page story in the most influential newspaper in India will have the lasting effect on your audiences of about 2 or 3 days. Your family will be proud, you can send the clips, your investors will be happy with the clips, but it really isn't going to make the people you want to reach more aware, enthusiastic, sympathetic, anything.
Sure.
This, am I going on and on and on?
No, just kidding.
Oh, I thought you said, oh. Every time you have a media engagement, I don't care about social or traditional, media engagement, it's a dot on a data continuum. And you need to keep having dots. When you come to an event like this and you build relationships and you talk to each other and to people, that is public relations. Public relations is not media scoring. It is about relationships with the public or publics that you need to reach. And I could go on too long.
Nikhil, you got a point?
Yeah, so in the Indian context, quite often PR doesn't stand for public relations. It stands for press release. What you need to understand, and this is to actually go back to your question, is that quite often we find that we get a press release. We're intrigued by what a company is doing. But because they're for the generic media and this is a mass mail sent out to everyone, we write back to them and say, listen, can you just explain to me this? And it takes them 4 days to 5 days to 6 days to get back to us. Good. So be very careful about who you choose. And if you ask me, I'd rather that an entrepreneur get in touch with me directly than go through a PR agency.
Okay. I want to add just one other piece. With PR people are supposed to be experts on us. Every Monday morning, I announce what the topic of my open forum column, which is my largest circulation column, is going to be about. I ask people to pitch me about this. I post my email so that they don't have to tell their competitors or whatever, so that they can go a little longer. In an average week, I get 3 pitches related to that request. In an average week, I get about 50 pitches that are related to nothing I have a passing interest in. So that makes people like me get jaded toward PR agency people. If a startup does it, I understand that. I will cut an early phase company a lot of slack. I've been around long enough to have trouble saying this line. That I know in this room right now, there's over 100 people, I'd say. One of you is going to change the world. One of you might even become India's next entrepreneurial billionaire. And many of you will do what Vinod Khosla did. You will grow and change because of your failures. So when you approach me, I'll cut you a lot of slack if you don't suck my time dry and you don't take no for an answer. Sure. If an editor tells you no, try to figure out what they did, what you did that didn't click, and come back later with a better story.
So, Archana, your point?
Yeah, very quick point.
30 seconds.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I wanted to leave you with really is, as a journalist, for me, the biggest high is when I feel I've discovered a startup, rather than when somebody tells me about it, right? Because that's my biggest high. So if you're really good at what you do, and I go out and find you, believe me, this entire conversation we've had for the past 30 minutes is actually irrelevant when you really think about it. You ask me what gets me excited. It's when I feel I've discovered a startup.
That's perfect.
So I think that's it.
We'll go more questions. Okay, sir.
Actually, my question is basically that we understand that our preference is not PR, but it's really difficult to get in touch with the journalist because we don't know anyone. And being a startup, the easiest and accessible thing comes as a PR agency because they might have some relationship with the journalists, and that can push at least our visibility.
Sure.
A very, very quick point to that, okay? I'm just telling you this, okay? This is just a point. As a startup, you're networked. You have your peer network, you have other startups that you know, you have investors. Believe me, if one of them tells me about you, I'll be a lot more interested than having a professional PR come and tell me about it.
Right.
It's just a thought.
Right. Okay, one more question.
In my case, all contact details are available anyway.
Right. Archana, I'm a great follower of yours, not just on Twitter, but now I think good journalists and in all the leading publications are really tough to get access to. And I think I just follow-up question on that. So there is an opportunity cost which a startup pays because you really want to talk about, they're doing something great. Well, you have got only that amount of resources. You can either go out, build your Rolodex and reach out to each journalist and spend some quality time, creating that sort of a brief for them. Or you go with the PR, which again, which doesn't make sense. So, and again, I'm a founder of Rangde, and we've tried different alternatives, including the old age press clubs, where we've gone and tried to network. But there you end up, noticing that they're all interns, pretty much. It does create a great audience. There's some 40, 50 journalists trying to take your pictures, and that none of that will get covered because it's just a dry run for them. So, there is an opportunity there, actually, where there is no networking platform at all for journalists to come down and meet entrepreneurs, whatever that means.
So we have 3 here.
Contact a blog, talk to blogs, we talk.
So we'll do more questions. One thing which I have on my sheet.
Can I just add,
Yeah,
because Nick just said a very, very important thing. There's a guy in America, he used to write for the Financial Times. He ended up starting his own blog. He's doing okay with it. He became his own media company.
Tom Wolinsky.
Online, each one of you can be a media company. And in America, the playing field has become very level because every company that wants news is their own media company. Their followers may be much less than the Times might have, but their followers are the people most relevant to what they're doing.
Sure. In fact, online the balance of power, at least in the US, has shifted, where there's so many blogs covering the ecosystem that it's the blogs that want the news. They want to be the one who discovers something. So instead of them not being accessible, they're actually calling people and saying, hey, tell us first. So the balance of power shifted. I think that balance of power will shift here in the future as well, but there's just not enough of blogs around.
So more questions from audience, anybody?
Just a comment on, you guys have been telling so much about the communication thing. So maybe it'll help everybody else that there's a book by the name How to Put Your Point Across in 30 Seconds or Less. So maybe everybody should read that book before reaching out to you guys.
Thanks for the tip. Any more questions from the audience? Yes, Uncle.
So I was wondering if I run into you in the event, should I just take out my iPad and start showing your product right away, or I should mail you?
Let me start, because...
Shell, only 30 seconds on that.
Only 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Don't. You have 27 seconds, use them wisely.
You can ask me if I have a minute.
That's the pitch Shell wants.
And then start. So you can ask if you have a minute, and if I have a minute, I'll say yes. If, say, I want to talk about this, otherwise I'll give you a time and say, listen, contact me this way. Take a forward from this.
Let me do my kvetch.
Go ahead.
Let me... Do you know the word kvetch? It's a Jewish word. I lost 30 seconds there, didn't I? I came here to meet people, and I have been very, very happy and gratified by the reception. But I have been having a good conversation with a person over here, really enjoying myself, and somebody has come in front of me and put a business card in front of my eye, and while I'm saying, what the hell is that? They're talking in my ear, and they actually think I'm going to write about them for that. It gets better. I was followed into the restroom yesterday. There are witnesses. It happened.
Never happened to me.
Okay, so one question from my side. So when is the right time to engage one of you?
Do you have a minute is a great question. It really is. Again, my world is a little different, but meet me on Twitter, meet me on Facebook. Start talking with me. And when you talk to me, connect somehow or other, your readers would like to know, I read your piece. Show somehow or other you know who I am. And, it's the press is like saying, you Indians. There's something prejudicial about it because while we have certain ethics, certain culture, certain processes, we're each of us different.
I also wanted to, sort of break this entire, I don't know, perhaps we're creating this impression that we are hard to get. It's not true at all. We want stories to write about. We want good stories to write about.
Yes.
I absolutely want to meet interesting people. I want to hear about interesting work. And I know the startup community is where much of the interesting stuff is happening. So just make sure that you tell me what is interesting. That's the point. That is it. Don't give us irrelevant information. Don't try, talking about things that are not pertinent to that issue or talking about the wrong thing to the wrong person. That's it. Beyond that, I don't think there's too much mystique about this entire, how should we approach you? How much time do you have and all of that stuff? Why? This is my business, listening to people. It's my job.
Great, so why don't you give them your email address, right?
It's archana.rai@timesgroup.com. Absolutely.
I think it's
printed everywhere. Yeah. It's printed in the paper. It's there everywhere. I mean, there's no mystique to this. That's why I'm so surprised about it. That's about it.
So finding editors is bone dead easy. There is this thing, you might have heard of it, it's called Google. Okay. And if you don't know the right editors for you, type in a few keywords. see what happens.
All right. So we'll continue.
I have a question.
With questions. All right, ma'am.
Yeah, so, a bunch of you are saying it's easy to contact us. I don't think it's easy. Archana, I want to tell you that I probably find it easier to contact the CEO of Flipkart or investor at, 5 venture capital companies and find it much harder. And I've tried this through LinkedIn, through emails, and I can write some articulate emails. So it's not easy to reach mainstream media. And the reason it's relevant is, like Shell was saying, we would love to, form a relationship. We as an entrepreneurs over Twitter or whatever forums or blogs that you write or contribute at. But that's a lot of time that is invested in each and every person that I want to connect to. And as an entrepreneur, I'm already stretched out for time also. And the reason I'm bringing this direct question up is I have a competitor. They have far more money than my startup. And every week, they have at least 4 or 5 major publications covering them. So I'm doing everything. I'm doing SEO. I'm trying to go to the right places. I know who are the right people that would want to cover me. But I'm not finding it easy to compete, with my competitor. And ultimately, we are all looking for attention. And I would like to say that
Can you tell us right now your story in 30 seconds?
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, what is, instead of being indirect about it, just tell us what's your company, what you do.
Yeah, I can. How does that matter? I have 2 startups. I can do 30-second picks for any of them. It doesn't have anything to do with the pitch.
One sec. I'll just add.
What's going on?
Hold on, sir.
Do you want all 3 mics?
All 3 mics together.
What is going on?
You have to gang up now, okay?
Well, I'm going to capitalize on it, okay? So I have 2 startups. One is called MobiQuick. It's a mobile services company. You can buy mobile apps and you can compare data plans and buy mobile recharge there. And the reason we are different is because we enable micro payments via wallet. So you can have one account and manage mobile recharges for all your family for one place. The other company that I'm running is called ZackPay, and it's an online payments processing company. And I used to work for PayPal for quite some time, and I'm trying to build a new generation payments company in India because everything that exists is about 10 years old and doesn't work for most e-commerce companies.
All right, so she has the pitch.
Just a minute of your time. See, I worked as a journalist for 9 years, then now I'm with NASSCOM. I know it's very difficult for smaller companies to get a visibility. You have, unless you don't have that day Q3 results of the or Q4 results of the large companies, or you are doing weekly 1 edition of covering the smaller companies. However, there is nothing there for smaller companies. Let me tell you, I find it very difficult for members to get visibility for the activities what we do for emerging companies to get a space in most of the business.
So I mean, my point here was...
Sorry to cut you off. Your time is done. Let the journalist...
We really hit
Sir, we'll come
hot
back to you. Sir, we'll come back to you. Let them answer. Okay.
My thing is look online.
No, that's easy. No, all I want to say again is, in that sense, okay, in your case, for you're doing what you're doing. I would want to then, if I had to write a story, my question would be, how many customers use this? What's the story behind it that I can relate? Because going back to what the point the gentleman there was making, there is a position for me that I have to look for in the paper to write that story. Where am I going to write that story? How am I going to write it? And why should I get so much space in the paper for that particular story, right?
Please, this is not a conversation between you and in the panel here. This is a general audience here. So that's a much more broader problem. If you are not getting heard, you have the answer. Any more questions on that not being heard?
Even the product company, Khosla is everywhere. I was just reading the newspaper cuttings. There are plenty of other good things happen here, but you see all the press cuttings. There is always Khosla.
Sir, hold on. Look, that's what I'm saying. Look online. We haven't covered Vinod Khosla, but we've covered Anand Rajamani because he gave an absolutely brilliant talk yesterday. Look online. That's what I keep saying.
Okay, Archana, on that.
We've covered, we have more happening on the product conclave as well over the next 2 days, so that's there.
I'm sorry, you asked a question and you're walking out of the room? So I guess we shouldn't bother answering, and that's an answer why I wouldn't cover you.
I'm really sorry. I thought you were talking about some different things.
Well, we were answering your question, but it's okay. I forgot what the question is now.
All right, we'll get to the next question.
But I guess you don't think you can get it from us because you asked it and you walked out of the room. Thank you. Nice meeting you too.
All right, any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question. We have a different kind of problem. We create products for the US market. So let's say we get covered by a blog called Macworld, right? Every such blog requires an exclusive story. So once, let's say, Macworld or New York Times covers us, rest of the blogs don't cover us for a good amount of time because the story is already covered by a big blog. But as Shell said, it is important to have a continuous line. And one article that we reviews us is just a dot in that line. So how do we maintain that continuous process of visibility?
If you have a startup, you should have a lot of news coming in a series of continuums. You have peaks and valleys. A product launch is a big thing. And if anybody in this country is covering new technology, your product launch is your chance. And you should put it together. But you should look at who you're seeing. And if you have a piece that goes to this editor, piece that goes to that editor, piece that goes to the next editor, you can have a very good ongoing thing. First you launch the product, then you get users, then you get case studies. There is a continuum of events as you grow and succeed. Hopefully you will grow and succeed.
Okay.
All right, last question. We are running out of time. Yes, sir.
Okay. One question, okay. It pertains to the news that is being reported from product startups, okay. I contacted a journalist. He said, if you have deals, okay, that is the only news I can put, okay. Otherwise, if you even get an award, okay, or even if you have patents or new products, I'm not interested. I can't put it in the mainstream.
That's very good information. When you have a deal, let him know. When you have other information, find the editors who cover that.
See, even technology magazines in India, okay, they are not ready to publish, okay, if there is a product innovation or some new
There's
product.
at least one tech editor in this room.
All right, Nikhil has a response.
Very quickly in 10 seconds. We don't cover awards because I don't think it adds value for our readers. It's marketing for you. We're not in the business of marketing or PR for anyone, period. So if someone's taking a decision, respect that.
All right, thanks, panelists. Archana, you have a closing 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Shell and then Nikhil.
I think we've really been at cross purposes over here. Here, essentially, in terms of what you think of is the news that you want published and what we as writers think is newsworthy. I think that's the challenge here. Everything that you think ought to be written about isn't necessarily newsworthy and something that my reader would be interested in, which really is the only filter that a professional journalist would worry about. That's really the basic point. And I think you should approach it from that point of view. Everything that you want written about isn't necessarily something that the reader wants to know,
Absolutely.
right? So I think that's, if you keep that in mind, it makes your conversation with us and trying to reach us. You say it's difficult to reach us. If you say the right, tell us the right information, give us the right news, we're always open to information.
All right, Shell, 30 seconds, closing remarks.
Oh, I have a mic. I am really surprised at the amount of frustration that I sense in this room. And I don't really know what to say about it because I'm an outsider. In the US, social media has been emerging and emerging and emerging. The largest hits in the technology sector in America are TechCrunch and Robert Scoble, which is probably orders of magnitude more important to that community than the New York Times and the Washington Post. It seems to be different here. It seems like the blogging, Twitter, Facebook trinity is not developing as rapidly as I guess I thought it was because I talked to so many people from India. But I would advise all of you to find that as a route. If you cannot get the press coverage you want, become a media company. It's fast, it's easy, and it's a lot of fun. It does take some time.
All right, great.
And oh, by the way, don't ask an editor a question and walk out of the room. It really pisses them off.
Sorry, Nikhil.
Not much else to add, but very simple thing that we're approachable, we can be contacted. It's just that you have to figure out that we work on time cycles sometimes. There are times when, for example, during the quarterly earnings seasons, we're just flooded with so much to do, working 12, 14 hours, 15 hours, that we just don't have the time. So at times, if we don't get back, send a reminder. If we respond, and we give you a time saying, can you contact us then? Get back to us then. That's the way I look at it. Just think about it as if you were in the other person's shoes. How would you feel about it? I know that's difficult, but we also try and do that too.
All right, great. Thanks, Nikhil, Archana, and Shell. Glad to have you. There's one key line which I am taking away, which Shell mentioned: PR is a process, not an event. Remember that. All right, I have some mementos from NASSCOM to give away to these three eminent panelists.
That was a tough crowd.
Yeah, I was. Nikhil?
Thank you. I was looking in the wrong direction. Okay.